I was planning on starting my YouTube series on Mark Knopfler's solo career this week. However, this time last week, this happened. Yes, all of Mark Knopfler's studio albums between 1996 and 2007 are being re-released in a big box set on vinyl, and there's also going to be a CD edition of it. And it's coming out, in the UK at least, on the 1st of October. It's coming out in the United States of America land in December. All the albums have been remastered by Miles Shoal. It's not clear to me whether or not they've been half-speed mastered or just conventionally remastered, because the previous remasters that Miles did of Local Hero, Brothers in Arms quite recently, as well as the 5 Police albums, all of those were half-speed remastered, but I don't know whether or not the Mark Knopfler solo albums are going to be half-speed mastered or not. But Miles knows what he's doing. I mean, there's no question about it. They're going to sound great. Mark's album sounded amazing to start with anyway, so I can only imagine how good they're going to sound on vinyl. Now, of course, for many, many years, we have been waiting for vinyl editions of Mark's first solo album, Golden Heart from '96, and Saint of Philadelphia from 2000. These albums had never been released on vinyl because back in '96, it was around the time that vinyl was sort of dying out as a mainstream format, and by 2000 it had pretty much gone. By the time I got to 2002, which is when The Replica's Dream was released, vinyl was just starting to resurface. It never went away completely, but it was just starting to make a bit of a comeback, and The Replica's Dream was actually released on vinyl in limited quantities. But I never got my hands on a copy of that album, so I am really looking forward to hearing Golden Heart, Saint of Philadelphia and The Replica's Dream on vinyl. I've always felt that The Replica's Dream, with the kind of album it is, because it has this sort of acoustic, quite rootsy sort of basis, that it would sound wonderful on vinyl. I mean, vinyl would just be the perfect format for it. So I just cannot wait to hear these albums on vinyl. The set also includes a bonus album, which includes all of the B-sides, the studio B-sides that Mark released during those 11 years. So you've got with Gravy Train, My Claim to Fame, Tall Order Baby, What Have I Got to Do, Let's See You, Camarado, The Long Highway, Small Potatoes, Summer of Love. Lots of really great tracks that got left off albums and ended up as B-sides. So it would be great to hear those tracks on vinyl as well. So that's another little thing to look forward to. There have been the inevitable sort of complaints from some of the fans saying, well, why couldn't you include, previously unreleased outtakes? Why couldn't you have released a live DVD instead? Well, all of this stuff, all of it requires work, and Mark is currently working on a new studio album, which will hopefully be out, I would assume, next year. So he's in the midst of doing that. Of course, putting a live DVD together would also take quite a bit of work in terms of cutting it and in terms of mixing it. So it's not something that I would tend to expect, and I'm just delighted to get Mark's first couple of solo albums on vinyl, because they've never been released on vinyl before, as well as The Replica's Dream, which I never had a chance to listen to on vinyl. So it's great news, and I'm very much looking forward to it. My only slight complaint with this new box set is that it doesn't include All the Road Running. Now, I know All the Road Running is technically not a Mark Knopfler solo album because it was a collaboration with Emmylou Harris. But to me, that album is, in essence, a Mark Knopfler solo album featuring Emmylou Harris. Without wishing to belittle Emmylou's contribution to it, it is part of the same lineage as the rest of Mark's solo albums. And I also, for some reason, never got around to getting that album on vinyl. I've only got it on CD. So I would love to hear that on vinyl. Perhaps they'll release it separately, I don't know. The only other complaint I have is that with many vinyl box set releases, they also release the albums separately, so that if you don't want all of the albums, if perhaps you already have some of the albums on vinyl, which I do, you can buy them separately. But it doesn't appear that they're doing that with this one. Nevertheless, it looks like a very nice box set, and as I say, I'm sure it's going to sound fantastic. Presumably, there will be a second volume containing all of Mark's albums that he's released since 2007. So that would be Get Lucky, Privateering, Tracker, and Down the Road Forever. But it does kind of make sense that they've released a box set of Mark's albums from 96 to 2007, because Get Lucky was the first of Mark's albums that he released in a big box set, which included everything. It included the CD edition, it included the vinyl edition, it included DVDs and all sorts of bits and pieces. So there's probably more chance that certainly Mark's immediate fan base will already have those albums on vinyl, because they would have got the box sets. But I would assume that there will be a vinyl box set of Mark's albums since 2007. And I'm going to leave my series on Mark's solo career until that box set comes out, because I thought it might be nice to tie it in with the release of the box set. So I'm now moving that back to October. In other news, one of my other musical heroes, Lindsey Buckingham, formerly the lead guitarist and vocalist, and very much the sonic architect of Fleetwood Mac, announced a new album in June, which is imaginatively titled Lindsey Buckingham. And the first single was released on the day of the announcement of the album. It's a song called I Don't Mind. It's a great track. First few days after it was released, I couldn't stop listening to it. It's just a track that gets into your head, and it's got Lindsey's typical sort of production techniques written all over it. The synthesized vocals, for instance, that's very typical Lindsey. He has said that this album is going to be quite poppy by comparison to his previous solo albums. Lindsey's solo work is generally more along experimental lines than what he was doing with Fleetwood Mac. He tends to think a bit more out of the box, and the music tends to be a bit more progressive. But this album, I think, is going to be a bit more kind of straight and narrow. He's released a second single from the album since then, which is called On the Wrong Side. And in many ways, that song is a sort of a modern day Go Your Own Way. And it's got some fantastic vocal harmonies on it. Lindsey is such a great engineer, and the way that he's constructed those vocal harmonies, and the way that I mean, you've even got a sort of a ninth chord in there coming in at the end of the chorus, which is created by his vocal harmonies, which is really, really clever. So I'm very much looking forward to that album. I've got it on pre-order on CD and vinyl, and that's very much something to look forward to. And one of the things that I should say about Lindsey, I mean, so much has happened to him in the last 3 years or so. Firstly, he got fired from Fleetwood Mac for seemingly quite trivial reasons. And then a little while after that, he released a compilation, a solo compilation, Solo Anthology, which was a very good sort of cross-section of his solo career. And then he went out on tour behind that album. That was back in 2018. And then not that long after that, he had a big heart operation. It was apparently a triple bypass, which is no picnic. And so in the process of having that operation, because he was obviously intubated, they shoved a tube down his throat, it affected his vocal cords, and he couldn't sing for a while. I'm so happy to see that Lindsey is back, able to sing again, and able to perform again, and he's going out on tour in the US behind this new album later in the year. This is Lindsey's first new solo album for 10 years. The last one was Seeds We Sow, which Lindsey actually said at the time he felt was his best work. So it's going to be interesting to see how this new album stands up to it. I think it's going to be very different to Seeds We Sow. It doesn't seem like it was 10 years ago, but of course he has been quite busy in the meantime. He was touring with Fleetwood Mac. He also made a collaboration album with Christine McVie from the band, which is a great album. So it doesn't seem like 10 years, but unbelievably it is. But yeah, I think that from what I've heard of it, that's going to be a terrific album. I'm really looking forward to that. And finally, Sting news. Now I know it's a bit uncool to be a Sting fan in the UK these days, but sod it. Last year, 2020, Sting was supposed to have been continuing his My Songs tour behind his album of the same name. It was an album of remixes and re-recordings of some of his most widely recognised songs from across his career, both with the Police and solo. So that was going to continue last year, but obviously it didn't happen because of the lockdowns. So most of those shows have been postponed. I'm actually supposed to be seeing him at the London Palladium, which has been put back now to April next year, and that's going to be great because I've got a really good seat for that. And what a venue to go and see Sting in, because it's a relatively sort of intimate venue. However, I suspect that this tour will be repurposed a little bit, because when everything got locked down, Sting was obviously at home, and it gave him the opportunity to start work on an album. And there's been a little bit of info from Sting himself coming out in interviews about this album, that he's working on something that is kind of eclectic, which is often the case with Sting's work. And then last month, having been recording, I think initially at Lake House in Wiltshire last year, and then maybe a bit of work in Tuscany at his estate there, and then at his apartment in New York. He said that I've been working on this album for about a year, and it's called The Bridge, and it's coming out in November, and it will be preceded by a single. This was about a month ago, as I say, but we haven't actually heard anything about it since. I'm beginning to wonder whether it's been postponed or something, but hopefully we'll get to hear something about it soon. But that really is, to hear new material from Sting, I mean, whatever you might think about him, he is one of the all-time great songwriters and performers. And I personally think the finest vocalist in rock history, because it is such a clear, penetrating tone to his voice, and it's instantly recognisable. And for a long, long time, after the Sacred Love album was released in 2003, the years were going by without a new Sting album, and we were thinking, is he ever going to write a new song again? And then all of a sudden in 2013 we had The Last Ship, and that seemed to unlock his writer's block. And so a few years after that we had 57th and 9th, and then we had 44876 with Shaggy, and then we had My Songs. There's no new stuff on My Songs, but it was still quite enjoyable, even if it didn't really have a lot of point to it. But I listened to it on vinyl very recently. It is actually very enjoyable, and it does sound very good. But to hear some new material from Sting will be fantastic. It's always exciting, because he is such a great songwriter. He has a unique signature to his work. If you hear a new Sting song on the radio, you know exactly who it is. You know who it is instantly. So that is something else to look forward to, and I hope we'll be able to hear some new Sting material very soon. In the meantime, because I'm not going to be making my Mark Knopfler solo series until October, when the new box set comes out, I might start work on my series on Sting and the Police. So look out for that. I'm sure you'll be fascinated by what I have to say.